Hi everyone, this is Lisa Espinosa, spiritual career coach, author, and host of the podcast Soul Studio for Your Career. I'm so happy to be here with you today on day one of the journey through answering your inner calling. So if you happen to be watching this and you don't know what I'm talking about, Answering Your Inner Calling is my book, which, was released 4 years ago. And, my book's birthday was last month. And my soul was really guiding me to create an offering where I could lead you through the chapters of my book. And at first, typical of the ego, I was trying to complicate it and make it just something that was going to take a lot of time. My parts were like, oh, I need to really plan this, and it needs to be really, it just needs to take a long time. I'm not ready to do it. And then, of course, as I was meditating and slowed down and listened to my soul's guidance, it was like, no, it's time now. Now is exactly when I can do it. And the fastest, easiest, simplest way to do it seemed to be Facebook Live. So that is why I am here. Welcome, Lorenza. So before anything else, let's go ahead, Lara, hello, and open a beautiful sacred space so that we are here together, aligned, and ready to receive all of the teachings from your soul, from the divine, from the space. So wherever you are, if you can take some nice cleansing breaths. And as you take these cleansing breaths, connect with your body, connect with the earth underneath you. And let's do that mudra of presence. If you don't know what it is, that's fine. It's very easy. Just raise our arm up, bring it down, and we say, I am present, I am here. So let's do that 2 more times. I am present, I am here. Again, I am present, I am here. And we bring the palms of our hands together. And I just invite all of your souls to be here. Of course, your soul's always with you. All of your divine teachers and guides. We welcome a circle of golden pink light to surround everyone here, all of you who are here live and all of you who will watch the transmission later on. And that this, today and the next 4 days, that it bring you clarity on your soul's medicine, clarity on how you are meant to evolve the way that you help the world. And we bow to each other and to ourselves, and we end and begin with a namaste. Namaste, everyone. All right, so today, actually, let me talk about the intentions for this 5-day journey. What the intention, and the intention of my book, Answering Your Inner Calling, and I'll read, the subtitle is 3 Practices for Following Your Soul's Guidance Toward Joyful and Fulfilling Work. So the intention of this whole 5-day journey is that wherever you are at, if you have consciously been on a path of following your soul's guidance for some time, and I know that many of you have, then that you, through this journey, you will be catapulted into the next evolution of that. Because your soul's always guiding you to go deeper, to share more of your medicine, to be bolder in a authentic, compassionate, vulnerable, tender way. And if you are absolutely new to this, if you're watching this, if your soul leads you to this transmission and you're like, I've never done this consciously, then same for you, that wherever you are now, that just deepen your connection, your relationship with your beautiful soul, and that you are able to create such great momentum in the way that you share your medicine with the world. So I want to just give a little brief kind of like examples of some of the people that work with me. So one category would be that you are in a career right now that you absolutely dislike and you just hate, and you just know that your soul's guiding you to something different and you're feeling stuck. So that's one, you might find yourselves in that. Or you might be in a career, and this is actually more of my clients, most of my clients are in careers that they like, that they know they're sharing their medicine, they know is part of their purpose, but you might be feeling like, I know there's more I'm meant to share. I know that my soul is guiding me to either refine, up level, to bring in maybe different modalities into the work that I do. So for example, if you're a therapist, Perhaps your soul is guiding you to bring in more spirituality into your into the work that you do, or whatever you do. So it might be that. Or if you're in between careers or have retired and you're feeling there's more to me, I know that I am still meant to share my medicine, and I'm trying to figure out what that is. So if you find yourself in any of those examples, or maybe one that I didn't name, but the common denominator is that you have this longing, you have this drive, this calling to share more of your soul's medicine, even if you didn't use those words. So if you've never heard the word soul's medicine before, you might have called it something different. Why is this important right now? It has always been important. It is more important right now. There is urgency. There's a sense of, I can't waste time right now, because the world, the planet, the world is going through a big evolution. And when it's going through an evolution, there's a lot of systems that are breaking down. It's just like what happens at a personal level. If you think about the times where you have really gone through some challenging times, and on the other side have come out of it a much more courageous, compassionate, loving person, when you're on the other side, you can look back with gratitude and think like, oh my gosh, like even with, and even thanking that experience, because it led you to where you are now. The planet is going through something like that right now. And it has been going through this for some time, but it is in the birthing pains of one level of evolution into the next level of evolution. And our beautiful planet has her own, she is putting out her own calling of her own to all of us to wake up even more deeply and say yes to sharing our medicine, because our medicine will help the planet to evolve. That's why this is so essential and important. That's why my soul was like, do this, and why I do everything I do. But it's like, so my prayer for this offering is that as you watch this, as you sit here, whether you're watching it today or whenever you watch it, that you allow yourself to feel that sense of urgency, not a sense of panic. Your soul's urgency feels very different than the ego's urgency. The ego's urgency feels like, I'm running out of time. Oh my gosh, look at everybody else. They're so much better. They're so much smarter. How can I do this? That's the ego, the ego's urgency. That's not what I'm talking about. Your soul's urgency is different. Your soul is loving and compassionate, and your soul is just kind of tapping you on the shoulder, or maybe like a little harder, nudging you and saying, you agreed that when you were here on the planet, you were going to share your medicine, that you were going to have the courage to heal those blocks that you have, heal your insecurities as you share your medicine, because that's going to help. So that's a very different sense of urgency. So that is the reason we're here. And today, as I was doing 5 days of answering your inner calling, today is chapter 1. Today is the foundation. And I was really thinking about this, and this has been so good for me to revisit my book this intimately. I mean, I talk about these teachings all the time, but I'm also in the middle of writing my second book, and I could feel my first book nudging me. And as I was reading through the book, first of all, I was so happy to see, okay, yeah, I agree with all that still. Because part of me was like, oh my gosh, what if I read something and I'm like, I would say that totally different. And I really didn't find that. Of course, there's added things, and I will be sharing those with you here. But I was so humbled and grateful as I read it, like, oh gosh, yeah, this was a labor of love for me. And when I was reading chapter 1, I was like, gosh, this is in many ways the most important chapter. Because the teachings that we're going to talk about today, if you really commit to practicing them, to integrating them, to embodying them, everything else will flow. So I wanted to say a little bit of my story for those of you who are watching this who might not know. So I've been doing this work now for 10 years. I can't believe it. It's refined, it's evolved and refined, of course. But it was 10 years ago that I left my career as a middle school teacher, teaching 7th grade for almost 10 years in the Chicago public schools. And please know that that work was absolutely part of my life's purpose, my life's mission. So if you're watching this and you're being guided to switch careers or shift it in some major way, do not think that that means that, oh, your old career, okay, that was a mistake, or I'm not going to take those, all that I learned into my new career. I couldn't do the work I do now if I hadn't been a 7th grade teacher for almost 10 years. So I was a teacher, and then as I had been, going through a lot of challenging times, one of them, a divorce, which is always challenging, and mine was definitely very challenging, and then losing someone very, very dear to me, just a wonderful mentor, mother figure to me. And it was all of that was happening. My divorce was actually finally over, but then losing this mentor who had really walked me through the dark night of the soul that was my divorce that lasted 5 years, the actual divorce proceedings. So to, have this woman in my life who was so, not just she was loving and kind, and she was like, how do I want to describe her? She was just never deviated from her faith and trust in me. I mean, she could see my strength when I couldn't see it. I mean, this was 10 years ago, so I've been on a spiritual journey my whole life, but I'm in a different place now. So she really was like my I'm really a science fiction, fantasy obsessive person sometimes. So I think of her as like my Dumbledore, my Gandalf, my Obi-Wan, she got me through this dark night of the soul. And then very soon after it was over, she unexpectedly got a very serious illness and died. So that's where I was. And that's when I started doing yoga and all these different modalities that started to connect me with my soul, even though I didn't know exactly that that's what it was doing. I knew it was good for me. So I paint that picture to then say that when I had that experience in the classroom, so my book starts with a story, a scene in the classroom as I'm teaching reading. I want you to understand that when that happened, I'd already had a year of, practicing yoga, starting to really, because I was in such deep grief, and Jane, that was her name, she was a yogi, and she was always like, you need to do yoga. And so I felt committed in that way to these mindfulness practices in a way that I hadn't before. That all of that was tenderizing me and opening me to be ready to really hear my soul on that day, the day that the scene that starts this book. But I want you to understand, it wasn't like I was doing yoga every day or anything like that. Like I left and went to an ashram. And so please don't think like, oh gosh, I've got to, do all these things before my soul speaks to me. No, I was a teacher. I have 5 children. So I was a mother. I was a 7th grade teacher in Chicago public schools, which is very, just like requires a lot of energy. And so I was, going to a studio maybe once a week, but really committing to my meditation practice at home. So on this faithful day, Jill, thank you, Jane. Yes, I agree. Thank you, Jane. Yes. On this faithful day that I was in school teaching reading, and I remember what book we were reading, An Island Like You, I had like a little bit of an out-of-body experience, right? And it happened really fast. So it's not like my students were like, where's Miss Espinoza? Because that's what they called me. But it was, I'm sure you probably experienced times where you're in a scene, but you're also watching yourself. But this was different than not being present. I know sometimes we can be in an experience and we're not present, we're protecting ourselves, so we're kind of watching ourselves. This wasn't like that because I felt very comfortable. By that point, I'd been teaching 9 years. I loved my students. I'd been in that same school for a long time. So I was very, I was in my element of teaching this book. So this out-of-body experience was definitely a soulful experience. And in that experience, I was watching myself teach the class. And then I heard this voice saying, your time here is done. It was just that. Very calm and peaceful and clear. So it wasn't like, your time here is done, but it wasn't tentative. It was very clear. And that was that. And then I was, back really fully present with my students. And I write in the book that moment was this moment of both such relief, like, oh my gosh, yes, this is why I have been feeling this discontent. And what I mean is, even though, I'd been teaching 9 years and as a 7th grade teacher, and there was so much that I still loved about the work and felt there was such sacred work, I was also feeling a bit like I was spinning my wheels. I was feeling, and there were a lot of good things happening in my career. There was, I had my master's, I had my national board certification, I'd been awarded some really prestigious award. There was all these doors opening. So it wasn't like I was this burnt out, bitter teacher that was like, I have to leave. There was all these good things happening, and yet my brain kept asking, why am I not happier? So when I heard my soul's voice saying, your time here is done, there was this relief of oh, that's what I've been feeling. This chapter of my life is done. So there was that relief. Of course, immediately followed by the complete terror and panic of, what? What will that look like? How could I leave this? All of that, all of the fears. So there was that combination of, one of my wonderful teachers, Karen, calls joy fear, right? It was more like, for me in that moment, it was more like relief and terror. It was like, relief and peace and terror. And I just want to name for you that if you feel that in any area of your life, it's totally normal. Not only normal, it's like a marker that you're on the right path. So that happened, and that journey of not just hearing my soul say those words, but then following and taking action. Now I stayed a year, so it wasn't like I walked out of there with my bags and left school. I was responsible, of course, but that was my last year in the classroom. So that journey for me was learning, how do I stay faithful? How do I stay a disciple to my soul? Disciple meaning, right, a student of my soul. That I'm naming my soul my teacher and my rightful guide. So when there is a discipline to that, and I know the word discipline can have all these negative connotations, right? It can feel rigid and limited, and it can be that if it's led by the ego. But I'm talking about soulful discipline, as in you are a disciple to your soul, that you say, yes, soul, lead me. So how that journey of hearing that message and then actually following that guidance, and then not only after leaving the first year, but then, let me rephrase that, not only leaving, a year after that, I heard that was my last year as a teacher, as a 7th grade teacher. But then, of course, entering this unknown of, oh my gosh, what am I going to do next? And I want to share, I had a general idea. I knew that, I was going to be in the wellness field. I knew that I wanted it to integrate mindfulness and yogic principles and Reiki, which is something that I had become connected to. And Jill, you were part of all these beginnings. And, Reiki is a form of energy healing. If you don't know what that is, that's fine. You'll be able to receive these teachings fine. But so I had ideas. It wasn't like I was totally blank, but I did not have a blueprint. There wasn't okay, I'm going to leave teaching. So then September comes and I'm not teaching anymore. And this is exactly how all this is going to play out. Now, I'm not recommending necessarily that you do it this way. And most of my clients do not. Most of my clients, again, that there's a transition. Your soul knows exactly what you need. So I say that because when I first started talking about my book, when my book came out and I started doing all these book talks, several people would come out after the talk, and there were a lot of responses, but one common thing that would come up would be like, I could not do that. There's no way I could leave my profession without having a plan. Hey, Christina. And I can't hear my soul the way you do, all those things. So I want to be clear that, first of all, your soul will guide you in exactly the way for you. My soul was guiding me to guide others to do this. So of course, my experience would be, I don't want to say more challenging necessarily, but yeah, it would require more from me because I didn't know this at the time, but I was being trained to be able to lead others to follow their own soul's guidance. So when you think about what am I here to teach, what am I here to share with others, not usually, I'm just going to rephrase that. It always has to do with something you have really had to struggle with, or had to really show courage through, or face uncertainty with. And that was, I've had a lot of other situations like that as well, because I think my soul has been training me for this for a long time, my whole life. But specifically around career, of course that would be my story. That for me, my story would be, here I leave this profession that, not only had I been doing for 10 years, but was at the height of it in a lot of ways. All these doors were opening. I was being invited to speak in conferences. I was mentoring student teachers. There was just a lot opening because, for many reasons, one being that Golden Apple Award of teaching kind of opens a lot of doors. So to leave at that time, and my own children, my 5 children, were all students at the school where I taught. Some of them had been my students. That's like another Facebook Live. My science, not my homeroom students, but my science students, because I taught reading and science. And I was very close to the families there. There's so many wonderful teachers out there, and if you're a teacher and you're watching this, my heart goes out to you. My husband's still a teacher. Well, he was a teacher, he was a professor, now he's a teacher again in Chicago Public Schools. So I just know how sacred that work is, and it meant everything to me in a lot of ways. So, of course, that would be my story, that I would leave that and all the fears that brought up, and that, of course, I would leave it for very much a lot of unknown and vagueness, because my soul was really training me, and like, you are just going to be led by your soul step by step by step. But I want to say that for you, although it's the same process, and I'm going to talk about some of the highlights of this chapter, for you, I have found for most of my clients, in fact, I can think of maybe one client where this hasn't been true, that for most of them, it is a much gentler transition. But the main thing you need to know is that your soul will lead you exactly on the steps that are meant for you. So this is one thing I want to say. Your soul knows that the biggest block to following your soul is fear. That is the number one block. It's fear. It's fear, 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 fear. That is the reason why this is such a radical, revolutionary act, such a courageous act to follow your soul's guidance, because the biggest block is fear. Because as soon as you say, I am going to follow my soul's guidance, your ego gets really loud and says, but what about money? But what about retirement? But what about health benefits? But what if you don't find anything good? What if you leave and then you can't come back? All of those things. And so your soul understands that the last thing it wants to do is add fear to you. The last thing it would want to do is to increase your fear, because then you're going to run away from your soul. Of course, your soul's still with you, but you will turn away from hearing your soul's guidance. Me, that situation with my career was scary, but compared to all the other initiations, like I had said, I just gotten but I had been through a pretty horrendous divorce, which was also a journey of really tuning into my soul's guidance to be clear that that was the right step. So that had been so intense. That had been such a journey for me, such an initiation, that I was ready for the career initiation. Because compared to that, as scary as the career part was, it wasn't the same intensity. And there have been other things in my life that had been preparing me, that keep preparing me for this. So I have a little clipboard here of bullet points that I wanted to make sure that I talked about with this chapter. So one is some guiding principles about your soul. Okay, I know what they are. I'm just kind of looking because I don't want to just stuff this with like tons and tons of content that you then have a hard time digesting. And I want to say that's a teaching for you, for all you teachers who are here. And even if you're not a teacher, although a lot of you are actual teachers, I think I'm writing this, you're all teachers. The truth is we're all teachers. And our ego tries to kind of say, well, if I'm doing a class, if I'm doing a workshop, and if I'm writing a book, if I'm writing a blog, if I'm talking to a friend about something, I have to sound really smart and I have to put a bunch of content in. That's our ego. Our soul is so simple. Your soul's always guiding you to simplify, not make shallow, but to simplify, to clarify, to offer in digestible transmissions. So as much as part of me wanted to be like, oh my gosh, I want to go just give them as much as I can to squeeze in here, I also know like that'll be like it's like if you had this, and Karen also, my one of my teachers, former teachers would use this food comparison. I feel it fits so well. If you have a beautiful meal in front of you, so delicious, your favorite food, and it's a ton, and you just like gorge on it, you just eat it and eat it and eat it. And then afterwards, you're just so stuffed, you can't even move, you can't even breathe, it doesn't even feel good anymore. As opposed to being served this beautiful plate of that same delicious food, but it gives you space to digest, to enjoy it, to really integrate it and actually become, feed your cells. So this is what this is, right? That's my intention for all my offerings. I provide this beautiful meal, so to speak, that you can digest, and that your soul will highlight for you what is especially relevant for you in this moment. Remember, these will be recorded. So later you can watch it again, and you watch it again, you'll be like, oh my gosh, I didn't even notice she said that. Now my soul's saying, focus on that. So anyway, guiding principles of your soul. 1, your soul loves you unconditionally right now. If we all believed that completely in ourselves, the whole world would heal. Because every problem the world has stems from feeling we're not loved by our soul and by the divine. So please do not dismiss these. Yes, I love Karen's analogy too, Lorenza. Don't dismiss these like, okay, these sound fun, but tell me the teachings, tell me what I should do. No, this is the most important. 1, your soul loves you unconditionally right now. Why is that important? Because it's important for you to know that it's not later when you have the perfect career. It's not later when you're not feeling scared anymore. It's not later when, you have it all figured out. No, your soul loves you now. And when you remember that and remind yourself of that, you know that anytime you have a critical thought about yourself, and critical thoughts about yourself can be very loud or subtle. In fact, sometimes the subtle ones are even harder to heal. So loud might be, I remember having loud judgmental thoughts about myself years ago, right? But it could be really harsh. When I was healing from trauma from childhood, I could have voices in my head like, you're so stupid, you're so blah, 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 just all that. I don't even want to name all the words, but you can imagine you probably have felt that at some point in your life. Then as you heal, you heal those inner critics. And we'll talk about that tomorrow when we talk about that practice. No, that'll be the next day, I think. But we'll talk about that. Then, probably if you're watching this, your inner critic is more subtle than that. But it's there. And the inner critic can sound like, oh, you should do that. Or why do you still do this? Or what's wrong with you? Or why can't you be like that person? Or, all of those things like that. What you need to know is that your soul never, ever speaks to you like that. So when you think about your soul loving you unconditionally and you catch those voices, you are to remind yourself, wait, that's not coming from my soul. Your soul is only always saying, I love you, I love you, I love you. And yes, your soul might say, you've outgrown this job. You've outgrown this. It's time to take steps, little steps forward to change directions. But it will always be in a loving way. And if you ignore your soul's guidance, your soul doesn't get mad. Your soul's like, well, forget you then. It's not your soul. Your soul's unconditional. It's like relentless with its unconditional love. It's always like, I'm here. I'm here. I'm always here. So one, your soul loves you unconditionally. So if you ever catch yourself berating yourself, you kind of use that as like, wait, that's not my soul speaking. Whew, okay, that's not my soul. Right? The other thing is your soul has you, not the other way around. So what does that mean? When, and I share this story in the book, when we start on this journey explicitly, it can feel like here I am meditating or praying and I'm going to connect with my soul, right? My soul that's deep within me. And there's a truth to that, of course. But the bigger truth is that your soul is so much more expansive than your physical personality in this moment. Your soul is eternally tapped into source, the divine, God, whatever word you want to use. Your soul, in effect, has you. So if you think of, I like to think of my soul as this and of course words are limiting, but words are helpful as well, right? So please understand, this is not like I'm saying this is the official diagram of what a soul looks like, okay? But this is what helps me visualize it. So I see our soul as this beautiful, just like such expansive light, right? That is always tapped into source, the divine. So our soul is always bathing in the divine's grace, the divine's wisdom, the divine's abundance, the divine's joy, the divine's presence, the divine's generosity and gratitude, all of those things. And then our soul, then if you think about the light becoming matter until it becomes our body and us and the personality here in the earth plane, then we have the responsibility, but also the great joy and honor to express our soul's light, our soul's medicine in the world. One of my other teachers, Kairat, calls it the big get to. Like, we get to do this. I know sometimes it can feel like, this is so difficult, this is so challenging, and I've so been there and still am there at times for sure. But also to remember, like, wow, we get to do this. We get to be in the earth plane. We get to be in this school of life and express our soul's medicine. And we get to be part of the evolution and healing of this planet. So your soul has you, not the other way around. Your soul is holding you always. What changes, what shifts is that we can get so distracted by the world in front of us that we forget that. Or we remember and we're like, okay, later when I have more time, later when I'm healthier, later when I can pay my bills, like, okay, later I'll connect with you. Or I'll connect with you just like a little bit, but then I gotta get to the real world, to my real life. That's not how it is. Your soul is the real life. That's the real life. That's what, and us, our ability to align with our soul's guidance is what creates the life, heaven on earth. Right? It's really that big. It's like we're creating heaven on earth when we commit to following our soul's guidance, when we commit to hearing our soul. So your soul loves you unconditionally. Your soul has you, not the other way around. Let me look what else. Okay, yes, that's what I thought. Remember, I prayed to give you digestible pieces here. The other thing is that one of the most important things you can do, and we've kind of talked about this already, is when you connect with your soul, is cultivate your soul qualities. Your soul has qualities, just like we can have qualities, right? You might be very organized, or you might be an optimistic person, things like that. Or a pessimistic person, whatever it is. Or feel like you're very insecure, or feel like you're confident. Those are like personality qualities. Your soul has qualities, many, but I focus on 3 in the book. And this was really hard for me to write, I want to say, because there's so many. And I just kept praying and praying and asking, okay, what are the most important ones? And these were the three that my soul, the divine, was like, these. So one, creativity. Your soul is creative. Remember, please know, and I write about this in my book, creativity is different than doing. Creating is different than doing. Creating is different than doing. Creating is different than doing. You can do a lot and be super busy and not be creative. So doing is from the ego. And in fact, overdoing is what keeps us from creating what our soul is wanting us to create. Of course, there's a place for doing, of course. And when we're aligned with our soul will guide us to take steps, to do things. I mean, I wouldn't be sitting here doing this Facebook Live if I just decided, well, I'm just going to meditate with my soul all day long and not create anything, not do anything like that. That wouldn't help me ultimately, and it wouldn't help you. So there is, of course, but create a doing part, but creating is the most essential thing. So for you to understand, okay, my soul's always creating and my soul's guiding me to create. Now, I know in our society, creating can feel like artwork, a drawing, a picture, a painting, artwork with my hands, or a book. It could be those things, but that's not it. It could be creating a new modality of healing. It could be creating a new way to work with your clients and students. It's creating, it's like there's no limitation, and your soul would lead you to that. So that's how you need to know that question for yourself is like, how much am I creating right now? Or am I just really caught up in doing? And I think that was one of the most painful things for me as a teacher in the Chicago public schools, or as a 7th grade teacher. I love creating, I love teaching, I love the personal relationships with my students, but there was just a lot of doing that was happening because just for many, many regulations, from the board and from the principal trickling down. And I'm not blaming any of them, it was all just part of the system that was in place. But my soul, now looking back, I realized my soul was like, you need to create, and my ability to create was limited there. In fact, I remember my principal saying this to me once as I was saying I was going to leave. And he said something like, you're like a genie in a bottle if you stay here. And that was so insightful of him. And it was like, and I felt that, and I've understood that in so much more ways, but it's like, if you think of a genie, right? A genie, so creative and all of those, just colorful and beautiful, but like stuck in a bottle. That's how it felt at that point. It was start school. That framework for me was feeling. I had to get out of the bottle. So creativity, and then the next one is compassion. These are not in any sort of specific order. They're all so important. Compassion, and specifically I'm talking about compassion towards yourself. Compassion towards yourself. We'll talk more about this when we talk about practice number 2. But again, why is this a soul quality? Because your soul's infinitely compassionate. Your soul has compassion for you and for the world. So if we're judging ourselves or judging somebody else, we know that we're not aligned with our soul's guidance. And compassion is not pity. That's different. Compassion is not rescuing. That's different. Compassion is not enabling. That's different. Compassion has the word passion in it, right? It's passionate. It's strong. It's courageous. I mean, gosh, I could do a whole training on what compassion is. Not because I'm an expert, but because I've been studying it for so long, because that is my medicine. That's what has helped me get to this point. Because I had such shame. That was one of my wounds, such shame and such self-hatred in different parts of my life, especially childhood and teenage years. So compassion saved my life, really. So your soul is infinitely compassionate. So you're cultivating creativity and compassion, and I'll talk more about compassion when we get to that other practice, because I'm looking at the time, and when I get to the third quality, one is receptivity, is the third one. And this caught me by surprise. And I thank Reiki, the fact that I was a Reiki practitioner, then Reiki master, and I did Reiki energy healing with my clients. And that I noticed so if you've never received a Reiki done a Reiki session, I'll just imagine yourself on a massage table, and there's all sorts of different ways. So please, I'm not saying this is the only way, but let's say you're on a massage table and the Reiki healer usually uses, I like using touch, right? So if it's in person, she or he might put her hands on your shoulders and she's channeling energy healing. This could happen long distance as well. In fact, on Thursday, I'm going to have a long distance Reiki for your career. You're invited. But when I started doing this, one of the things that I realized it was my soul saying was always to my clients or my students was, let yourself receive, let yourself receive, let yourself receive. And I didn't plan that. And I was like, where is that coming from? It was just like, and I realized like, oh my gosh. And of course, as I was saying this to my clients, I was mostly saying it in my mind, not out loud, although sometimes I would tell them out loud as we debriefed a session, that my soul was telling me the same. Remember, your soul is receptive. Your soul is always receiving the divine's love. So this soul quality of receptivity is so important, that you become so good at receiving. And this is they're all challenging to the ego. Receptivity can be really challenging to those of you who are drawn to my work, who are such givers, who have wounds that have caused you to be rescuers or overgive or just kind of lower your standards on how you should be treated. So receptivity is essential, because when you receive, you will be able to receive from your soul, not just ideas and answer and guidance, but receive your soul's love. Remember, I said your soul is unconditionally loving. All right. The last one is your soul will lead you at exactly the right pace for you. And I kind of talked about this already. Your soul will lead you at exactly the right pace for you. And I will talk more about the stages of, I think that'll be in day 5 when we talk about the stages of your soul's communication with you. Meaning that sometimes your soul's like, wait, pause, stop, slow down, receive, heal. And your ego's like, no, go, 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 go. And there's other times when your ego's like, I have to slow down. I have to stop. This is too fast for me. Oh my gosh, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I'm not ready. And your soul's like, you're ready. Go, go, take the steps. Keep moving forward, right? So we'll talk about that. But the point right now is that your soul leads you step by step at exactly the right pace for you. And this is all of these are practices. You're not going to learn them overnight. You're going to practice this. So just to review, what are the soul principles? 1, your soul loves you unconditionally. So if you catch yourself being mean to yourself, that's not coming from your soul, right? Your soul has you, not the other way around. To align with your soul, cultivate your soul's qualities of creativity, compassion, and receptivity. And your soul will lead you step by step at exactly the right pace for you. Make sure I said all of these. Yep. So I want to end with a meditation. A little inner journey, and I'll have some oracle cards for you as well. So an inner journey for you to receive your own soul's guidance, your own soul's love. And when you take these journeys, release any pressure of, especially if you're just starting with this, especially if you don't have in fact, let me slow this down. For those of you who already have a daily practice where you pause the interrupter rituals that I talk about later chapters in my book, where you pause throughout the day to listen and receive from your soul, yay for you, because that is such a radical revolutionary act and it's so easy to skip that. For those of you who already have that, still do this inner journey and see what your soul says of like, how do I refine that? How do I up-level that? What is the next step for me with that? For those of you who don't have that, there's no shame in that. I'm not shaming you or pointing fingers or anything, but please listen that you cannot skip that step. If you're truly committed to following your soul's guidance, to evolve your career, truly committed to sharing your medicine in the most loving, beautiful, impactful, efficient, creative way to access divine solutions that will help our planet, it is your responsibility to make sure that every day throughout the day you are aligning with your soul and receiving from your soul. It only needs to take a minute each time, 5 minutes at the most. So the parts of you that might be like, well, I don't have time right now. That's not true. Because I'm not saying, that you need to do 30-minute meditations throughout, multiple times throughout the day. I mean, you can if you want to do that. That's not what I'm talking about. So please be really honest with yourself. If you're watching this and you're like, oh gosh, I have such a prayer to align with my soul's guidance, and I'm not doing the most important thing of pausing throughout the day and receiving from my soul. And you can just receive, I don't want to say just love, that's the most healing thing in the world. Again, not with a judgmental, like, oh, what's wrong with me? I'm such a lazy person, I'm not doing this. No, remember, your soul is unconditionally loving. But just understanding, like, oh, that's my ego. My ego is scared of death. Please understand that. We need our ego for different reasons, for sure. But our ego is scared of that. There's a real fear that if we fully surrender to our soul, the ego will die. Because in a way it will. We'll still have it here to help us take steps and for its rightful place, but it won't be the leader anymore. So I want you to just grasp the real fear that is true, that comes up, that the resistance that we have as humans to really surrendering to our soul. There's no shame in that. We all feel that. So that's why this is a practice. That's why I'm doing these transmissions, right? That's why I do everything that I do for myself, because as I teach it, I learn it, but to keep repeating that same message. So just catch it. If you're like, okay, after you watch this, if you're like, you know what? I'm going to commit to, for these 5 days that we're doing this. It's from now to June 2nd. I know that's more than 5 days, but 5 days transmission and all those days in this sacred circle. I'm going to commit to at least three times a day, bring my hands to my heart, silently or out loud, say, beautiful soul, I'm willing to receive from you. I'm just going to do that for a minute. That's 3 minutes, just 3 minutes a day. And let's say Wednesday comes and you realize, I haven't done that. You're not going to shame yourself. It's not like, what's wrong with me? It's like, oh, wow, that's how big of a resistance I have. That's how scared my ego is of losing control. And that's how big my mission is in the world, right? Because like I've said many times already, the world needs this amount of commitment and discipline to our soul. I talk about in my book somewhere about flirting with your soul. This is coming forward. Flirting with our soul. And we've all been in those times during our lives where we're like, oh, this sounds cool. This sounds great. Let me take that class. Let me take that workshop. Let me get those crystals. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it's a flirtation because we're not ready to commit. It's like we might be really into it 1 week and then weeks pass by where we haven't done anything. I'm not talking about flirting with our soul. I'm talking about a deep, committed relationship with your soul. The most loving, the most meaningful relationship you will ever have, really. So let's go ahead and do our inner journey. All right, everyone. So I'm going to burn some sage, and I'm so excited. I have this new, it's called Trinity, because it has 3 different beautiful medicines here. It's got white sage and cedar. So clearing the space. So just imagine that I'm there, just clearing your space, not just your physical space, like your house or home, wherever you're hearing this, but your body. Take some nice breaths. So something I said, something in this transmission might have really stirred up things, right? So just feel that and feel your soul, how rejoiced she is. Your soul is beyond gender, by the way. I'm just saying she now. Okay? And bring the palms of your hands over your heart center. Breathe into your heart. And just say out loud if you can. If not, just say it in your mind. Beautiful soul, I am ready. I am willing to receive from you. Beautiful soul, I am ready. I am willing to receive from you. Again, beautiful soul, I am ready. I am willing to receive from you. And just feel a receiving. And it's okay, you can imagine it. Or you might start to feel lots of heat, like I feel lots of heat in my heart as I'm receiving more than I've ever received before. So let's do that as a prayer, that you can receive more of your soul's medicine right now than you have ever received before. And that it will only get better from now, from this moment on, your ability to receive. And if you can't feel anything in this moment, don't judge that. That's okay. Your soul always responds. And then this question, beautiful soul, which of these 3 soul qualities is the most important one for me right now to cultivate? Creativity, compassion, or receptivity? Again, which of those 3 soul qualities is the most important one for me right now to cultivate? Creativity, compassion, or receptivity? And maybe your soul will put them in order of importance for you right now, or maybe your soul will just give you one that your soul saying, this is the one, start with this one. Start with this one. Because they're all related. When you work on one, you work on all of them. And then beautiful soul, of all the things Lisa said, of all the teachings that was shared today, what is the most important thing for me to remember right now? What is the most important highlight? So almost like your soul has a highlighter and is highlighting some of the things I shared today. It's like this, remember this. This is the most important thing for you right now. And then just imagine your soul in front of you, looking just like you, so, but more radiance, more light. And she stands in front of you, or he stands in front of you. And she cups her hands and fills her hands with this beautiful light. And she comes over the crown of your head and she's pouring this light, the light of your soul, down the crown of your head, that's bathing every part of you, every part of you. Just receive it, receive it, receive it all the way down to your feet. And thank your soul. Thank you, soul. And receive your soul's gratitude for you as your soul is grateful for you. And now with deep gratitude, we bring the palms of our hands together. I visualize everyone here watching this live and all of you who are watching the transmission. Just visualize you with so much love and light, your heart lit up, as we bow with that blessing that means the light in me sees and honors the light in you. Together, we bow and end with a namaste, namaste. And I just see all of your souls bowing back to you in deep reverence for your heroic human journey. All right, everyone, that was so fun and joyful. I know I'm a little past time, but so, this will be recorded, so you can watch the rest of it as a recording if you need to go. A couple of things, and I'm looking at my paper because I always forget these. Oh, okay, invitations. One, if you want to discuss with me the possibility of just me mentoring you through the different coaching programs that I have, go to my website, the Work With Me tab, and read all about the breakthrough session. So that might be something that you want to do. But please read through it, read the page so you understand what the session is about. It's a free 45 to 60 minute session, but there's very specific intentions for it. So make sure you read that if you're interested. And there's an application, very simple application to fill out. This Thursday, I will have a virtual career Reiki. I think it's at 11:30 a.m. all about renewing your soul's medicine. I am so super excited about that. I'll talk more about it tomorrow. And then on June 4th, I will be having through the Infinity Foundation, but it's also, these are all virtual offerings, by the way, over Zoom, is cutting and strengthening energy cords. 2 hours to really learn how do you do that and why it's important and essential, especially right now. Also, if you are guided to write a review on Amazon of my book, if you're getting things from it, and this is all totally up to you, I would so appreciate that. You know, people, I know it's the same for me when I go on Amazon and I read, I'm looking at a book, considering buying it. I read other people's reviews to see like, okay, is this something I can trust? Will this be helpful for me? So if that, I know many of you have already done so, but if that resonates with you and your heart leads you to do that, I would totally appreciate that. Okay, so let's pick a card for you. You're welcome, Lorenza. So let's see, what is your soul's message for you? Oracle cards are a way for your soul to speak to you. Okay, so what is the most important message right now for all of you right now? Oh, here it is. It came out. Soul's truth. I listen to my soul's simple truths and allow my life to unfold naturally. Look at this. That's what I was talking about at some point today, right? That your soul is always simple, not shallow, simple and efficient, and will lead you step by step. That means you take one step, and not until you take that step will the next step be revealed. So if there's a step your soul has been guiding you to take and you haven't taken it yet, and you're like frustrated because you're like, I can't, you know, my life seems to be on hold, I need more information. Your soul's probably saying, I love you so much, but I've been saying for you to do this step, and I'm just gonna wait until you take that step, because once you take it, you'll be ready for the next step. Okay, so simple, simple, simple. And I'll just do a surrender card for you. Yes, Jill, back to basics. Yes, and the basics are the meat of it, right? Are the true, like the foundation. Oh, so perfect. Surrender to trust. Trust yourself and your decisions. Don't be swayed by other people's strong opinions about what to do. Take action and be confident that you have chosen the right path. And this is absolutely, remember, this is all about your soul. So your soul is saying, trust what I'm saying. Trust my guidance. Because a lot of times other people in your life, even people you love and that love you, they're not your soul. So they might have really good intentions, and they're like, oh, no, that's a wrong decision. You should really think, think it over. Or the economy is really bad right now. You shouldn't do that. They have good intentions, but they don't know. Your soul knows. So back yourself up. All right, everyone, this was so great. Love you all. I will see you tomorrow at 10. If you know anyone in your life who would resonate with these teachings, please send them to my Facebook page. They can watch the recording, and they will also be on my website under free resources, soul videos. All right, bye, everyone. See ya. Thank you for being here.